All right, guys, here's a big one. This is my Home Depot rescue from North Carolina. I've mentioned him before quite a few times, but this is Phalaenopsis elegant Karen Aloha. This one is another one of those kind of free-growing, free-blooming Phalaenopsis I have. It'll always have at least one flower spike, always in bloom, but at the same time, it'll always be growing leaves. So the oldest flower spike I think I have on here that I haven't cut off yet is right here. And this goes down into the media. I don't know if you can see how far down it goes in there, but it goes down, and it goes down quite a bit, almost probably I'd say 3 inches down to the base of the plant there. You see it goes in right there, and then it connects probably way down here at the base. There's another old one that I snipped off, but this guy will always have a spike in bloom no matter what time of year it is, no matter how hot, no matter how cold, and it's always growing. Same thing, no matter how hot, no matter how cold it is, how much humidity it has, how much sunlight it gets, it's always growing leaves, always blooming. And this is another one of my favorites for that reason. It sent up this flower spike while this one and the one in the back was still in bloom. So this flower spike actually was a lot smaller because it had the other 2 spikes in bloom. And when it bloomed, it only had about 6 flowers on it. And that was when I was moving around and my mom was taking care of it. And once I moved down here, it aborted. It dropped its flowers really quick, aborted it, and then it sent up this really big, really nice branching flower spike. And this one actually has secondary spikes. So this one, and this one are secondary spikes, but it's also doing a tertiary spike, a branching spike off of a secondary spike. And I've never seen a Phalaenopsis do this, at least for the amount of time that I've been growing orchids. Honestly, I haven't even seen them with growers on, novelty type phals, but I just thought it was really cool that it's got a primary spike, secondary spikes, and a tertiary spike off of that. And this guy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's bloomed. This would have had 10 blooms at one point, and each of these had roughly the same amount, probably 6 on each one of these. This one's just not opening up, but I actually snipped the grow tip off these because I want it to produce another big arcing display like this one had before. This guy actually back in the middle of July had those 2, this old one down here, this one, and that third one in the back. All 3 of those were in bloom at the same exact time, and they were all, except that third one, those other 2 were these big branching arcing flower spikes. And the display on that, I wish I had pictures of it. The display was absolutely incredible. One spike came out the front like this, and the other one went out the back, so it just had this almost weeping willow tree appearance of these cascading blooms off of these really big branching flower spikes. It was probably one of the best displays I've ever seen on this plant before. These petals are absolutely amazing. They're a really deep, rich, creamy yellow, and I don't know if this is a purple background or purple spotting and veining, or if it's just a really dark maroon red, but it contrasts with the yellow so great. It's absolutely amazing. And this lip is just a real blush version, real blush color to that of what the spotting and veining is. All right, and next up is my Neostylis Bluebird. This is a pretty decently sized Neo. I know some people grow these, or the people who grow these bear root in, like, the Philippines or Indonesia, places, in South Florida and maybe even Texas and Southern California. They can grow these outside bare root just hanging off of trees. And I've seen some pretty good sized plants, and a lot of the plants that I've seen are more bushy. They actually have keikis or secondary growths coming off the base of them, so they just appear to be more bushy. But for me, I honestly like the way this one grows. Its growth habit is just straight up and fan-like. Makes it a lot easier to manage and fit into the rest of my collection when it's not blooming. Excuse me. Right now I have everything that's in bloom except for my Psychopsis out on my kitchen table, just because I have a really nice big kitchen table, and when I come home from work it's nice to walk into a house and see a table full of blooms. These have a really light blue tint to them, almost like an actual bluebird. I guess that's why they call it the Neostylis Bluebird. But the camera doesn't quite pick it up the way it does in actual, you know, what you would see with your eyes. They have just a really light blush blue, light blue, baby blue color to them, but the camera's picking up more of a purple and sometimes even pink under different lighting. But I have seen when I'm taking pictures of this to send to my friends or send to family members, that sometimes the camera will pick up that really light blue color, and if I can, I'll upload a little snippet either in this corner or that corner of the screen to show you exactly how blue this orchid could look under certain lighting. But it is fragrant, and this is the first time it's put out 2 flower spikes for me. I was growing at bare root, and I think everyone saw it in my previous videos that it was just hanging on a wire, and it had this really expansive branching root system. It was really neat to look at, and it was very interesting, but every time it would bloom, it would just put out a really small single flower spike out of one side or the other, and it would never produce a really big, beautiful display with 2 flower spikes like this guy is. I actually snipped off the growth tips because it just looked like it was draining too much energy out of the plant. The leaves were starting to fold up, you know, the way Vandas do when they're getting dehydrated. And it wasn't dehydrated. It's sitting in a self-watering pot. You can see the roots are green. Let me pull this out of here. There is water down there in the bottom, and you can see how green the roots are. So it wasn't, you know, lack of hydration that was causing the leaves to fold up. I think all the vigor and energy was being put into these growth tips on this flower spike and this flower spike, and it was just taking too much energy from the rest of the plant. So I made a hard decision. I snipped those off. Each side had, I think, gosh, probably 6 more buds that were going to open up, but I didn't want it to drain the plant and stress the plant out, because I have seen orchids bloom themselves to death. I know that's something that they can do, and I just didn't want that to happen with this guy. This was a Hawaii rescue. I was at Walmart with my sister, and we were just looking through the plant section, and you know, that was early on, before I really knew what different kinds of orchids there were. And we were just looking through the plant section. She was doing some landscaping at her house, and I saw this guy without any blooms. It was just, you know, obviously just the plant itself. And I was like, hey, that's an orchid, isn't it? And I ran over there and looked at it, and sure enough, it was a Neostylis, and it was on the death rack, actually. That's why I say I saved it from Walmart. But it was on the death rack. It was like $15, but in Hawaii everything is really expensive, so typically it would have been 2-3 times as much, $30 to $45. I think is what I can't remember exactly what the original tag said, but the big sign above the rack said orchids $15 or something. So I snatched it up, I brought it home, it survived the trip, and this blooms reliably every 3 to 4 months. So when I say 3 to 4 months, it'll spike every 3 months, and it'll be in bloom for the 4th month. And this one has actually been in bloom since, oh man, October. The beginning of October is when it started to actually bloom out. So this guy, these blooms last a really long time for a Vanda, and that's another reason this is one of my favorites, and I would never ever get rid of this orchid. It's so easy, you guys. It literally, you can grow them bare root, you can grow them in moss, you can grow them in bark, you can grow these in whatever you want. And they won't give, you know, two thoughts about it. They'll just do their thing. I will say though that when this was bare root, it wasn't as happy as it is now. When it was bare root, it was constantly branching its root system, trying to find something to help it retain water, retain moisture, trying to anchor itself into something. And as soon as I potted it, it stopped branching its root system. This was the last root that it was going to put out, and it stopped. And I think it's because the rest of the root system got anchored into the pot, and I think the only root that has actually come out of the side of the container is that one. So you can see it crosses from there, and then it goes through the pot and then down. So there's two roots that came out of it, but this is probably one of the most vigorous, most healthy orchids that I have, that is pretty much carefree, stress-free, and blooms reliably. You can mark your calendar on it. Every 3 months it comes in a spike and it's in bloom for the 4th month. So this is my Neostylis Bluebird. And last but not least is my Phalaenopsis. I think it has a crazy Japanese name. Hatsuyuki Nagoriyuki. I probably slaughtered the pronunciation of that, but we're just gonna go with it. This is the very first orchid I ever bought. This one, the only reason I'm showing you this is because it's probably going to be in full bloom when everything else drops its blooms. But you can see it's got these really silky, shimmery flowers, and the lip on this is absolutely phenomenal. That deep orange yellow that fades into a blush pink purple. It looks really bad. Again, this is one that got hit by the thrips really hard, and I think you can see here, the thrips got so bad they ate the top leading leaf inside the crown, and I believe what happened is it just sent up a secondary growth or a keiki out of the top crown of the plant. So this would be the mother plant right here, which was really healthy, had these really big, long, healthy leaves. It actually got sunburned back in the day, but it used to have these really big, healthy, long leaves, and then the thrips happened. And as I treated it, they slowly went away, but then, you know, how pests do, they always find a way to come back somehow. Really got that leaf bad and really got this leaf bad. And they were just chewing and munching on the flower spike relentlessly. You can see here that from the very second it popped out, they've been chewing on it, sucking on it, taking all the energy out of the spike. And as soon as I got rid of all of them, the plant knew, it branched its flower spike, and it came out with this really pretty display. This is the second time this has bloomed for me. I got this, let's see, I graduated high school 2012, so I got this my sophomore year of college, so 2014 is when I got this orchid, and this is the first one I ever bought. I got this at Walmart. Again, this was another rescue fowl. I think it was $2 in Montana. Orchids are way cheaper, especially in department stores or big corporate stores like Walmart. And it was done blooming. I think it had one flower, one really sad looking flower left on the very end of one of the flower spikes. And I think that's the only reason I bought it, is because I vaguely had remembered what it looked like and what it was capable of blooming into, and that's why I bought it. But anyways, I had it for my entire college career. I had it outside of college, after college, while I was traveling, and it never ever bloomed. That was before I knew how to grow orchids and before I knew how to pot them up and water them and give them the humidity and light requirements that they needed. So it just sat in my room in a corner in bark. And of course in Montana, unless you're watering your orchids every single day, you can't grow them in bark as easily as the labels instruct. So I think it was also one of those just add ice orchids, so I was also watering it with ice cubes, which in Montana is a big no-no. With any orchid, watering with ice is a big no-no because these are tropical plants. They cannot handle freezing temperatures. So this isn't in bark, it's actually in moss. This is just a top layer of bark. I think this really helped keep the thrips under control too, because it's a dry media sitting on top of the damp sphagnum moss, and that was really helping to keep the pests under control. But anyways, this is my first orchid, like I said, and it wasn't doing anything. It wasn't blooming. It was actually just getting smaller and just slowly dying because it was in bark. I was watering with ice cubes, and I didn't know how, you know, orchids grew. I just thought, oh, it's a regular houseplant. You can treat them the way you would a normal houseplant. Big mistake, and it was slowly dying, slowly getting smaller. Its leaves were getting less vigorous, smaller in size, and the root system was dwindling. The roots were, you know, slowly rotting off, slowly dying. And when I went to Hawaii to be with my sister for a bit, and I started, you know, researching orchids, discovering what there was to learn about orchids, I called my mom. I was like, hey, you got to get that thing out of bark. You have to put that in sphagnum moss. You have to get it hydrated. And sure enough, with my instruction and her carrying out what I told her to do, it came back. It looked really healthy. It bloomed once, and it was a big branching flower spike like this one is. This is a primary spike that got munched off. It died, and then it sent out 3 secondary spikes that are just as vigorous, just as big as the primary spike was. So this guy's gonna have a really beautiful display once he's fully in bloom, and I'll feature him in one of my videos when he is fully bloomed out. But right now, this is what you get. These really bright, silky, shimmery petals. Really blush pink, kind of like my Pinlong Charisse is, but there's no fragrance, unfortunately. The petals are really, really thin and fragile, and the lip is just, it reminds me of a sunset. All the colors of a sunset. You got the sun right there inside the column and the lip, and just slowly fades from oranges, from yellows to oranges to reds, and then purple right on the tip of the lip. But anyways, this is what I have in bloom now, and this is my orchid collection and my update. Excuse the mess, still trying to get things figured out, and I'll post this video and look forward to more ideas, and just leave comments, questions, or concerns down below the video, and I'll try to answer those and post more later. See ya.